There was a game company at one point.
Oh, yes, yes.
Tell us about that.
Berserker Works Limited. Actually, it is still dormant somewhere in the great vaults of New Mexico state legal papers. So
Okay.
it is still a company. In 1982, as I mentioned earlier, I was able to stop my full-time job. And what Fred and I did was start a computer game company with the backing of Bain Books. A lot of our seed money came from Bain.
Interesting.
Home computers were just hitting the market.
Uh-huh.
I think we had our first Apple II for a couple of years. No, not even. Maybe a year. And when Jim Bain, when I say, I mean Jim Bain, got hooked on the idea of personal computers, he and Fred were talking, and Fred had this idea to create what we used to call them? Like tabletop programs. They were illustrated stories. Okay? So what we did is we took a couple of his short stories and illustrated them and put them up that way. We also made actual games out of some of his stories. At this time, we happened to come across a Berserker fan, a fellow named Lloyd Johnson, who ended up working for NASA, an absolutely brilliant programmer, who, for kicks, had done some of these shoot-'em-up games with Berserkers. And all of this is gelling together, just
Right.
totally without you doing anything.
Right.
The things just fall in place.
And you had some background with computers.
Is
that right?
Well, my background, I was a math major.
Right.
So I was always fascinated with computers and programming. And I had done, what had I done? I had a class in COBOL and Fortran or something. And my job at P&M entailed creating engineering computer reports and then analyzing the reports. So I had been interacting with computers at work, and I had, taken a couple of programming courses. So we got into this, and it was a whole bunch of fun. We worked with incredibly talented people. There was a local artist, computer artist, Eddie Johnson, here in town, who did some of our work. There were a married couple, the Martinezes, who were great. Oh, wow, I can't pull the other fellow's name. And he's still a heavy-duty programmer here in Albuquerque for security systems, who worked with us. His name will come. And anyway, we got all this together. We sat around and said, okay, if we take Wings Out of Shadow, say, a Berserker game, and we divided up into scenes, how are we going to make this into a game? So we made it into a game, talked to these incredibly, Scott what? I'm coming back with the name, okay.
Perfect.
Yes, yeah. These incredibly talented people, and said, oh, this is our vision of the game. Can you guys do it? And they'd always say, no. And then you'd say, just think about it. But, this is what you do with creative people. Their first reaction will be, no, that's impossible on these dippy little, computers we have to work with. Mm-hmm. And you'd say, no, just let it sit a day, think about it. And they'd come out with phenomenal things. And let's see, we worked with Stephen R. Donaldson. Okay. We worked with Gordy Dixon. And we worked with a couple of other programmers and writers. And I think we came up with some pretty fun stuff. We didn't know diddly about marketing. So...
So did you get to the point of having a complete product? Like
we had 9
for sale?
programs for sale on the IBM Junior, the Commodore, the Atari, the Apple. So we had 9 programs out there for sale. And Bain did a lot of the backing. But he also, I think, was totally at a loss for how do you do distribution and sales in this new area, which nobody knew. So, actually, there is a website that's called Games That Were or Games That Might Have Been or something that looks at our games. And somebody at MIT was doing a history of gaming and included some of our stuff. And it was pretty visionary. The fun part was working with all these very, very bright, creative people. It was very, very fun. So that's the gaming company. It lasted about 5 years to 3 years, 5 years, something like that. We never made any money. You made enough money to buy the next computer you wanted, right. The next toy, so and pay your people. But that was about it. But it was so much fun. We had a good time with it. Do not regret those times at all.
Yeah, I mean, because now there's really established. I mean, there's game stores and of course games distributed over the internet But back then,
everyone was doing it off their kitchen table.
Yeah.
We had computers all over the house. It was crazy. But I mean, not only us, but what is it? The arts one, the gaming company, something or other. Arts.
Electronic Arts.
Electronic Arts was a tabletop company at the time too. We were all just starting. It was fun.
Yeah, and it was. I mean, you could really work with Fred on a project then too. I bet that was fun.
Yeah, pretty much my job was the intermediary between the writers and the programmers. Where I could see what the writers wanted and then sit down with the programmers. It's not that I knew enough to tell them what to do. It's sort of like being a cheerleader when you're with really bright people. You say, oh yeah, you can, and they'll say, how about that? And you'll say, no, that's not right, let's do something else. So it was good, it was fun. I think it was good for my children to have the computers around like that and see people having fun just playing. So, yeah, we had fun with that project.
Cool.
Of course, Fred was still, writing.
Right.
This was very much a side project for him. He was still writing stories to help pay the bills.
Let's see. So you've written a novel.
Mm-hmm.
Did I think that you said he really encouraged you to do that?
The story, if we're going to go into the story of my writing a novel, okay. When I left full-time work, I became interested in the history of science, particularly women in science. And I became obsessed with finding out everything I could about the first woman to get her PhD in mathematics. And it was really getting to be obsessive. So we're driving in the car one day, and Fred finally says, if you're going to put this much effort into a project, why don't you write a book about it? And I don't have the credentials to write an academic book on this particular person. And my mind sort of works that way, but it also sort of works storytelling.
Okay, right, because you could have written a nonfiction book.
Yeah, right, and I still play with the idea of writing a nonfiction, but the life story of this character affected me emotionally so strongly that I felt it needed a novel. That there had been one other straight biography of her in our century and one in the 1800s. People had tried this, But I decided, I don't know, it's the way that felt right for me, because I was more attracted to the emotional power of her life than I was to the academic achievement. It's like my mind was focusing in on her personal emotional struggles instead of, oh, now she published a paper here. Oh, now she's an editor of an academic magazine, and a woman had never been editor of a mathematics magazine. But those weren't the things that were touching me. The things that were touching me were what was going on in her emotional life. So I did it by way of a novel, which makes it neither fish nor fowl. It's too academic to be really pop fiction, and it's too fiction to be academic. But that's okay. I had to do it that way.
So did you switch roles? Did you hand it to him and say, "Tell me if this is awful"? Or
oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, he did a lot of editing on my book. He did. I drove, but he was the passenger, telling me, "Turn here. Maybe you should turn there." So it was actually very difficult because it was my first novel. Mm-hmm. And I think in your first novel you are invested so emotionally, it's very hard to take anybody's advice. You really have to force yourself. I found it really hard. Even from Fred, who was gentle and nice and kind. Right. It's still, I think that's the first novel problem, though. When you really, get it under your belt that you can do these things, mm-hmm. then you're more open and say, okay, that's what they think, but I'm doing what I want anyway. Or I'm not, or I'll change it, or whatever. But no, as a first novel, it was emotional.
Did you get any sort of insight into him and his work by having written a novel yourself?
I think I had a greater respect for how hard it actually is to put together something that makes sense and that follows logically and that keeps people interested enough to turn the next page. Yeah, I think I did get some insight into just how hard it is to put together work that big.
Yeah, I always find it interesting when you have someone that you're close to and you know for a long time, but they have some part of their life that mm-hmm. is profession or hobby they're really into or something like that. Mm-hmm. That if you get to do something real similar, or even work with them on it, mm-hmm. you gain a little insight into how their mind works.
Right. There is. I think there was that a lot. And a lot in realizing how emotionally tough you have to be if you're going to do this job. Because it comes at you from all sides. It's. I think people who are writers have to really have a pretty good sense that what they're doing is what they want to do and the way they want to do it. And that was maybe this came for Fred again, where we were saying he didn't seem to care about the outward accolades or labels you want to put on him. I think this sense of this is who I am and what I want to do, it has to be very strong in a writer. And from our friends, the ones I know who are successful, it's very strong. And the ones who make it, to actually make a living, mm-hmm. or near a living at this, they have a very good sense of what they want to do and how they want to do it. So, I didn't realize I had that in me too. So that was part of the writing a novel experience. Uh-huh. You find out, whoa, maybe I have that too. So.
And recently, another new thing for you, you're a publisher now.
Yes. Wow. What can I say? Very, very fortunate that e-publishing came along at the time it did, as far as my own personal finances and feeling towards Fred's work. If I had gone on the mission of trying to keep his work out there before e-publishing, it would have been very, very difficult. Backlists of writers are not something traditional publishers are very happy about, unless you're Jane Austen or Heinlein or
Right.
Arthur C. Clarke or something. Then they're very happy to keep your work out. But if you are more of a mid-list writer, then you're going to have some trouble keeping those books available. So e-publishing came out at a very good time. And my mission, of course, is to make his works available as much as possible. So I now have, I think, about 40 of his books up. And, I don't know,
That's a lot.
Maybe 8 or 10 more. And then I have ideas for collecting the works differently than they had been by the traditional publishers. And we'll just see where everything goes. For now, that's my focus. And when I get them all up as ebooks, then I'll look at other areas for trying to get it out. I think Fred's optimism, his belief in humanity, I know the big fancy stuff. I don't mean to be philosophical, but
That's right.
at another level, he really cared about these things, and I really care about these things. And I think these stories are a way to keep that, to make other people think about things in that light. Perhaps the quote you gave about him reflects that too. He's trying to tell a good story first and foremost. But anyone who tells a story, part of you and your beliefs are going to be in that story. And I think those are beliefs and things that are worth keeping out there. So that's what I'm doing for now. But, like the game company, life is strange and you never know what's going to fall out of the sky next.
Yeah.
Who would have thought there would be ebooks and that, that I, by myself, would be able to make a dent in keeping his work out there. That was unthinkable 5 years ago. Just unthinkable. So you never know. You just go with it.
Are you enjoying it at all?
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. For one thing, I am rereading all of Fred's work.
Right. And that way of it.
And that's very much a connection, an emotional connection. I'm getting to do some creative stuff. I get to design covers and things. I get to play in a new field like I did with the game company.
Right.
I get to play with people who are very bright and very ready to take chances. And I am enjoying it a lot. I can't wait to see what happens. There's all kinds of scuttlebutt. I'm sure people have seen it out there on what's going to happen to e-publishing. It's much, I will say this, for anyone who thinks that they're going to put their own book up, part of what makes it possible for me to do e-publishing and have enough income from it to make it worth the effort is that Fred had this reputation already. So he went into this big pool of unknowns. And among them, he's pretty, he has a reputation already. So a lot of his fans are now able to get their books on ebook. If I were writing a one-time novel and you're putting it up on your own, the marketing and publicity is always the difficulty of starting a business. And you're going to have to be not only exceptionally talented and persevere in your craft, but you're going to have to be really, really lucky to get people to notice you. So traditional publishing was very good to Fred. And I don't think that I would be able to do e-publishing if he, with any, to make it a wise business move, had he not had something of this reputation from traditional publishing. So that's my view on publishing, but I'm having fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I get
And
to
making
work
a little
with
money,
smart
it sounds
people,
like, too,
making
so that's
enough
good.
money to supplement Social Security, and perhaps more importantly, you keep thinking what Fred said. You know, what he writes may touch someone just at the right time in their life, and how do you put a price on that? You don't. You know, you that's what you hope. You put the stuff out. You hope, okay, maybe someone will see this who really needs it at that time. So there's a lot of reasons to do it. Besides, it's fun.
Well, I think that's pretty much the end of my questions. Did you have anything I didn't ask about that you want to talk about? Or
No, I think I managed to. I looked over the notes again, of course, before coming, and I think the only thing I came up with were things that I've managed to squeeze in. Like, I think Fred really cared about telling a good story, and whether, I'm not sure he was aware of it or not, but that his view of life and humanity is something that we need to be reminded of, and will help people. So that's it for me.
all right. Well, thank you. It's been a great
Sure.
privilege and a lot of fun.
Good.
Thank you, folks, for joining us. I should also mention that SnackReads has reprinted one of Fred's stories, Mr. Jester, a berserker comedy, believe it or not, which I didn't quite believe the first time I read it.
Yes.
It's a ton of fun, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.